So in this case, I'm the moderator, but I'm also kind of representing Israel. And so we have on this panel represented Israel, India, China, and Vietnam. And this, I think, is our opportunity really to learn about each other's ecosystems, about what's going on in each other's countries. I think that one of the most important things in terms of the theme of this conference is basically how do we actually create ties? How do we actually connect our systems and our countries? How do we actually innovate together? In fact, I loved in the presentation this morning by Dr. Arvind Gupta, the keynote speech this morning, in case you missed it. My favorite slide was the slide that showed the value going up as the cooperation and intensity of cooperation increases. And so, you know, at the lower level is sales and trade, and at the higher level is partnership and co-creation. The highest level is actually co-creation, where it's the greatest intensity of cooperation and also the greatest value brought to the table. And I think that is, we're looking for goals from this conference, from this meeting. It's creating that kind of co-creation. So the first step to doing that is for us to know a little bit about each other's, what's going on in each country, in each system. So what I'm going to ask our panelists to do here is to do a little showcasing, do a little, basically, why we should come to your country, what's going on there, what is the, what are the strengths of your innovation system, what are the weaknesses, what are the things, and I think we're lucky here to have panelists who not only know their own country deeply, but have been outside and are able to kind of get an outsider and an insider perspective, which is critical for knowing what your own strengths are, what your own weaknesses are. So once we hear that kind of survey, then we can start thinking about how we can combine our strengths. So I'm going to just start for just a minute to give you an idea with Israel. And in our case, you know, and I know it's hard to generalize about even a small country like Israel, certainly large countries like India, China, and Vietnam. I know Vietnam, you may not think of Vietnam as a big country, but 90 million people, that's a lot for us. For Israel, our strengths tend to be basically three things, I would say. One is technology. A second is a kind of a problem-solving mentality. We see problems, we want to solve them. We think that when we see a problem, we think we get this itch. We have to solve it. You know, in fact, if someone says you can't solve that problem, well, that actually just gets us more excited, and we want to solve it. So we're very oriented towards solving problems, and all our kind of entrepreneurial energy and interest and experience is kind of around that kind of that drive to solve problems. So we have the technology piece and the problem-solving thinking piece. And another strength we have right now that we've developed over the last 20 years is because, you know, we have so many startups, we're kind of on the radar screen when it comes to venture capital and investment and so on. So people know that there's innovation going on here to some extent, and that's helped us, you know, succeed as an ecosystem. We're at the point where we've had our first success stories, and we're somewhat known internationally. So that's, I think, another big asset that we have now. We have a lot of weaknesses, and in fact, you know, like many people, we're not always even aware of our weaknesses the way we should. Many of our startups fail because they're great technologies, which means they're great solutions in search of a problem. Our inventors come up with a technology, and then they go looking around for a problem to solve with it, but they often pick the wrong problem because they're not exposed to important problems in the world. They only know the problems that they see here in Israel, and that's only a small set of the problems that need to be solved. So we're not exposed enough to other countries, other markets. We're not very good at planning ahead, at management, at sales, at marketing, at all the things that don't have to do with the kind of initial invention, that have to do with scaling up that invention into a big company. So we have lots to learn. We have big needs. We only are good at certain pieces of the puzzle, and I've just given you an idea which pieces we're better at and which pieces we're worse. So that's the kind of thing I'd like to hear from you about your countries. So we'll start with Rajiv.
Thank you, Saul. I think one caveat about talking about the situation in India is a point that our Prime Minister Manmohan Singh mentioned, that whatever is felt to be true about India, the opposite is also true. Okay, so I'm going to be starting with that opening point, because I might present something which is probably a subset of the much larger system which is within the country. Saul also reminded me a few times that when we talk about entrepreneurship and innovation in India, let's go beyond software and also keep in mind the context of other aspects, whether it might be agriculture, energy, etc. So a few points to characterize where we are from an innovation standpoint in India. I think a dominant point for us is the fact that there is now far more confidence and far more demand within the country for solutions. I mean, India is probably the equivalent of a clinical trials market for all kinds of social problems which can exist over there. But we live with a lot with it. Now people are willing to live less with those problems. So one, there's greater aspiration, greater demand for solutions. And as the demand for solutions increases, we're beginning to see different types of innovation. One important aspect of innovation, which is getting characterized, and if I probably put it at this point of time, it is more a strength, is frugal innovation, about which a number of things have been written about. Wherein the idea is not necessarily, to create perhaps an over-celebrated product, but create a particular solution, not only as a product, but also a service, which is finally able to solve the problems for large numbers of people at a low cost, and in a manner whereby the people can use them. So in that case, it's more about the utilization of innovation, more the adaptation of innovation, as against ab initio, creating completely new products and services. Which is why you will find India rating very low when it comes to creating new innovation, but very high when it comes to innovation efficiency, about use of, let's say, solutions either from India or other places. And along frugal innovation, there's a new model coming in wherein people are using India as a test bed or a sandbox to solve problems around, let's say, education for the masses, which we're seeing in case of tablets and hole in the wall, or some of the medical devices we have seen, Jaipur foot and Jaipur knee, auto components. So solve it for a large market like India, and then export those solutions as a business to other emerging markets, whether they might be in Africa, rest of Asia, and Latin America. So that's the second aspect where people are creating frugal innovation-based export businesses.
Rajiv, to say something more about Jaipur foot, just as an example of this, because I think it's an incredible story of frugal innovation. Go ahead.
Yeah, so if you take both the Jaipur foot and the Jaipur knee, the Jaipur foot is basically an innovation by a doctor in Jaipur, which is in the state of Rajasthan in India, wherein he created an extremely low-cost prosthetic device, which is basically the artificial foot, at what we believe is probably around a 15th or 20th of the price of what might be a normal such medical device. And this was then followed on either by the same individual or others who came up with the idea of the Jaipur knee, which again is a very low-cost knee replacement device with similar kind of cost savings. And this foot has in turn made an artificial foot available to many, many people in India who would not be able to afford it. And has also created a new export market where this particular device has been exported to many other countries having similar economic profiles.
And there's also the example of the Arvinai Hospital and I forget the name of the
Narayan
cardiac.
Yeah, cardiac surgery, yes.
Yeah, both in eye surgery and cardiac surgery, hospitals that are doing high quality surgeries for many, many times, maybe 10 times as much, with 10 times the efficiency of, say, American hospitals or Israeli hospitals, both in terms of quantity and price. And this is exactly the kind of innovation strength that, you know, I see in India, that we, exactly the kind of thing that Israel would have a lot of trouble doing. It involves a lot of organization, a lot of efficiency, a lot of great management, and but it's definitely part of innovation. Not all innovation is technology. A lot of innovation goes into business model, goes into management, it goes into these things to create these kind of efficiencies. So we need to think of innovation in a very holistic way and all the pieces at once.
Absolutely. And which also brings us to the fact that while we might celebrate these aspects of innovation, I think there are certain other parts, okay, where India needs to fill very significant gaps. Because if you've seen, a lot of innovation basically works market backwards. It doesn't necessarily work R&D forwards. So if you look at more conventional measures of R&D, which is in terms of papers, patents, or, you know, or let's say even new ideas coming out of universities and getting commercialized, okay, we don't fare very well on that front. And there are significant issues in terms of the institutional framework which exists, okay, for science and technology to deliver very fundamental innovation. And that's a gap which we need to plug. And there are a number of issues around that. That's one part. The second part is, whilst we have frugal innovation going on, okay, we also have a new class of product entrepreneurs who who are creating software products, largely on the back of mobile, and now they're learning to go to international markets. So India's kind of having its Israel moment, where using the mobile as a platform, there are numerous startups, especially in Bangalore, okay, coming up, who aren't just looking at India as a market, but looking at the global market. So one primary example of this is a company called InMobi, which is probably at this point of time the world's largest independent mobile ad network company. And that was formed in India 4 years ago. And there are many others who are coming up who are largely in the mobile ad area or the SaaS product area. There the gaps obviously are very clearly, many of these product companies don't necessarily have the discipline of forming a product company or know how to go international. So we are at a very early stage of learning about how to create, okay, a product ecosystem in India. And even at an investment level, we don't have investors, okay, who understand how to basically assess early stage risk. So we have a big issue where there are far more entrepreneurs, okay, with great ideas than investors who have the ability to invest in these products at the very early stage. A number of missing pieces in the ecosystem. So again, these are some examples.
Thank you. So Rajiv, we heard a bit of introduction of each of the panelists, but just to add that, you know, Rajiv was doing e-commerce for one of the largest companies in India, and is now helping a number of companies at once scale up. Gang Lu, just to add to the introduction that you had, Gang Lu is sort of a one-man bird's eye view of the Chinese innovation ecosystem, because he created essentially, I don't want to say China's TechCrunch, because you created your own brand, which became quickly stronger than TechCrunch ever imagined in China, called Techno. And then eventually TechCrunch basically came running to you to see if you could help them in China. And so really the best person to introduce us to the Chinese ecosystem.
Okay, thank you for the very nice words. So, okay, just a very quick introduction. My name is Gang Lu. So as I said, I'm running a blog. It's just my personal blog. It was mine, but now become kind of media. It's called Techno. Obviously, you can see I'm male. I'm 35 years old. Okay, but excuse me for my baby face. So I hope I can say something mature. So, okay, okay, right. Back to the point. So take that joke. Speaking about the Chinese innovation in China, I think we have lots of strengths. I think the biggest strength for us, because for me, my background is all about like startups, web or mobile industry. So I don't really know about like green technology. So all my comments is only on web or the mobile industry. Because the reason I say that, because I give some big speech before. Then I remember the one time I gave a speech about like Chinese innovation. I said, okay, Chinese innovation, we are lacking of innovation in China. Then there's a foreign friends like standing up and saying you are wrong, and because he said also innovations. But I think it's not really conflict, because we are looking at different industry. But speaking of like mobile web industries, I think we are lacking of innovations. I think that's also a reason we really want to collaborate with the Israel startup here. But speaking about the strengths in China, I think biggest strengths, I think because we are from China. And China is, we have we have the population, we have fast-growing market, and also the economy. I think at least for now is looking okay. We are fast-growing. So because the China is the kind of the background, and so everybody look at China, look at the massive market, and everybody wants to share a piece of the cake. So that make Chinese market so interesting for everyone. If you look at the quantity of the startups, probably the more the same. But if you look at quality of startups, well, I think China is way behind Israel, because I heard many startup demo yesterday and at a Google campus. Like almost every startup I met here is that their ideas I never heard in China, because I'm pretty sure they are at least one of the first, because they are really thinking about the life, the problems the human being they're facing in their real life. Then they try to find an innovative way to solve the problem. But in China, I think 80% or even 90% of startups, they follow what's going on in Silicon Valley. Then I think what happening now is, I think what's wrong with the Chinese innovation is, I think we cannot complain about just on the founder. We need to complain about the ecosystems. I think that's something we need to improve, because if you talk about ecosystems, actually everybody involved, as the user involved, the founder involved, venture capital involved, angel investor involved, government involved. But if you look at it, look into each sector, each factor of the ecosystem in China. For example, the user, it's kind of shame to say, but Chinese user, they don't really want to pay for the service. So that means if you look at the mobile internet right now in China, basically it's kind of free market. People, the pay by download model just basically doesn't work in China. People want to pay for download, but what works is a freemium model. It works, but freemium model, but mobile gaming is really works in China. It's free download the game, but you can buy some virtual stuff. That's some Chinese young generation they get used to to do that back to the PC gaming era. So that's the problem with the user, because user they always can the always pirate stuff. You can download the music somewhere for free. So it's kind of culture, kind of free culture, which is bad for Chinese ecosystems. Then if you look at the founders, because the founders, I think what I heard, what I feel is at the beginning, I think most of the founders they want to change, they want to do something very innovative. But sooner or later they'll find out actually if we do something really innovative, then the big question is how they can make money in 6 or 1 year, because that's something we see or investor always ask. But then if you look at VC side, because the problem for Chinese VCs, they always follow what's going on in Silicon Valley as well. So what we see in Silicon Valley invest, they want to invest. So that's why you see like 2 or 3 years ago, you see over 1,000, 2,000 group on in China. And then 1 year ago, you see tons of Instagram in China, because that's the how Silicon Valley we see they are crazy about. Then later on, but the feedback, the consequence then we see is all the founders, they realize, okay, the best way to pitch to VC is to tell the VCs, okay, I'm the copy of blah blah. So that's what happening in China. That also for the government, is the good side is they are quite supportive, because they have some free money to give they have free working space. They give some very special regulation, like first year or second year tax free. I mean, which is good, but the problem is they don't really know how to do the startups. They think, okay, give some free money, then innovation happens, but that's not the case. So I think that's kind of strength or weakness right now.
So I'm just curious. I've been to China a couple of times for very short trips, but one of the things that struck me is that a lot of people kind of look at China and they say, well, kind of as what you were saying, that there's this tendency to do a Chinese version of what's coming out of Silicon Valley. But there's also a lot of innovation in that. I mean, to do a Chinese Facebook or a Chinese Twitter or Chinese, they're always going to be different than the ones coming out of Silicon Valley. And there's a reason. Sometimes there's a bureaucratic reason why the Silicon Valley company doesn't do it in China, because they're not allowed to or whatever. But sometimes they also, even if they were live, they could never do it in China because they don't understand China. It has to be done differently. And so just say something a bit about one thing that struck me is the importance of Baidu, of the Chinese Twitter. It's much more significant than it is in the United States and Israel in terms of its kind of social function in society. Maybe you could just say something about that.
I think there's a very kind of controversial word, a kind of keyword in China, what we call, here, like, I think the rest of the world we call that innovation. But in China, you often to hear the word what we call micro innovations. It's really controversial. What we call micro innovation is, because some people think it's kind of excuse for people, doing the copies. So basically, micro innovation means actually the core idea is copy from somewhere else, from Silicon Valley or whatever. But what Chinese company or founder are very good at is they copy the core ideas, but very quickly they are finding a way to localize the product, then later to monetize to product. Because the reason one do that, because there are lots of people that copy the same core ideas. Then the result is in China the competition is really tough. Like if you do an Instagram copy, then you have tens of Instagram copies within 1 month. Then you see what's the difference. So for founders, they have to think quickly, how I can localize product to be more kind of adaptive for a Chinese market. Then once they done that, they have to think a way, so how we can monetize that. So it's like an example saying like the Chinese Twitter. So the Twitter, they've been several years here. People still, wondering how they can make lots of monies. But in China, the company doing that actually behind it is Sina. So how they do that is, first of all, is I think the first way they do is to localize the product. Because I don't know how many of you, probably you never use, what we call Weibo, basically the Chinese Twitter. So if you look at the Chinese Twitter, actually, it's the same idea, 140, character, but in China the Chinese character. So it's more the same. But if you look at it, actually it's different, because if you look at Twitter, you only see like retweet or like kind of forward. But in China we see, because I don't know how many of you are familiar with BBS, like online forum. If you're familiar how the format actually is like, you post one message, then people in the same they can comment, so you can see the whole thread of the conversations. That's something you wouldn't find on Twitter. But when Sina localized product, they follow the same kind of strategies. So basically you publish one tweet, then when people retweet or people comment on your tweets, you can see the conversations. Then the original publisher, they can also see that, then reply. So that's kind of Chinese style of the online conversations. Then suddenly people just then we love it, because it's kind of the Chinese way of user experience. Then now when they get popular and get to like 200 million users, then Sina, the company running it, so try to kind of change the strategy to build the Chinese Twitter not just a media, to build as a platform. So you will see on the top of the Chinese Twitter, you see a menu, you can see like a micro virtual currency. You will see like a micro e-commerce, because if they have 200 million users, then they can use the users to monetize the service. So because now everybody using, I think you use Twitter for like social marketing, and I think some e-commerce website using Twitter for e-marketing. But then what Sina doing is you can just, the people can use what they call the micro currency to buy stuff, directly from Chinese Twitter. So that's how we can monetize that. Also, it become a micro. They cooperate or partner with many online game publishers. Because it's kind of, they want to build the Chinese Twitter as a Chinese social networks. So because the reason they're doing that, because Sina is like number one, they're running, but also there's some other Chinese portal that are also big, but everybody is running its own Chinese like Twitters. So they have to be fast as well.
It's very, very interesting. Yeah, I meant Weibo before. So we're going to get back to that, but I want to introduce Hung. As I mentioned before, he's the founder and CEO of the largest company in the world built on the Joomla website platform. And what was interesting when we talked earlier about this is that there are something like 400,000 users of the templates and the art produced by Joomla art, but most of them are not from Vietnam. They're really from all over the world, and none of them really know that they're using a Vietnamese product, that they're using a Vietnamese innovation. And actually, the dilemma of whether to put Vietnam, the identity on the website, reminded me a lot of what Israeli companies sometimes go through for slightly different reasons, but the same idea. Like, do we want to show off that we're a global company and highlight that, or do we want to hide that? I thought that was an interesting dilemma. But first of all, so just say something about Joomla and how that happened, and about the Vietnamese ecosystem.
All right, thank you, Paul. All right, so to answer Saul's question about Vietnamese quickness and strength in innovations, I think I'll tell you two stories. So so that you can have pictures of what is going on in Vietnam right now concerning innovation. So this story is not as big as Skype's story or Better Place like in Israel, but a very small story that that's one of the stories that is among a lot of stories are happening right now in Vietnam. So I know a farmer. So his daily job is just keep pumping the water in and out his farm. So he's would spend about 200 or even less. That's doing it every day, every hour, or just depending on the conditions of the farm. So he had nothing to do, and then he thought that he had to do something to change the way he works in a better way and he can be free to just do something else. And he don't have money, and he don't have iPhone 5, he don't have Samsung. Right, so he only have his a dumb phone, a Nokia's feature phone. And what he can do is making call and send a message. And he tried to, he have no friend, he's not really have a good education at all, but he'd go to the market and he tried to find a device, an electronic device that he can, it's amazing that he can find a way to control the power of the pump so that he can making code and send an element to control when it needs to be stopped and it needs to be started. So right now I'm speaking here and he's doing his job and still have a drinking session with his friend. So that is the house innovation is happening in Vietnam. So that is one of this very, very many stories is happening in Vietnam, because we have a small portion of people, staff people, actually have education, good education, and have access to other outside innovation. But most of the startup people, they don't, they have limited resource. So if the idea that I have been, the story that I have been telling you, it can be turned, it can be, if we can have some sort of solution to put it to the next level and make something bigger. So it's what we are looking for right now. So from that story, I want to say that Vietnamese do have innovations, but we don't really have the power or don't have the system set up to put that innovation to the next level. So right now he's still finished his job, but no one really know about that. And there's no kind of the VC and big companies, they are busy doing something else. So he's just finished the ideas and that's it. So if we have resources to grow those kind of solution and idea into a bigger one, because feature phone is still being used widely in Vietnam. So how about making a missed call or send an MS to control the other thing in their life? So that's it's very interesting that yesterday we have a discussion on how to make a name card. So the future of the name card. So Arvind from India, Dr. Arvind, he have an idea that the name card should be, the next name card should be have only 4 or 5 tickets. So everyone that's making a missed call or making a call to that ticket, and the person who making the call will have all of the detail of the person he want to talk to. So it's also a very simple solution, and I see a connection between the ideas and the solution, right? So maybe we can link that idea into making the next name card for business people. We don't have to carry a name card anymore. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. Are there any innovative things that you know of in your countries that take advantage of mobile plus health, or mobile plus education, or mobile plus ag tech, whatever it is, solving real problems in these countries?
For short, I think like you mentioned, we are seeing many interesting innovations which use the mobile with or without the internet. And some I'll give as examples of solving social problems, and some which are just offering new consumer features. So many in India actually have the mobile but don't have access to the internet. So now we've seen 2 or 3 new companies coming in. One which has created a complete mobile internet service which is based upon an SMS. So if you have any query, then there's this company called Innos which has been set up 2 years ago. Okay, at least they've followed the Silicon Valley college dropout model, because there are 5 dropouts from Kerala who started this business 2 years ago, and they've introduced a very simple service wherein if you have any query, you basically send the query to 55444, and they in turn will take the answer, summarize it, and they'll send it back to you. So the last 15 months, they've handled close to around 1.3 billion queries, and they have 130 million subscribers. That's one example.
Is this automated, or is it with
It's automated.
people?
It's completely automated.
It's okay. So it's not people typing in SMSs. Okay.
No, there isn't a BPO model there. The second one is there's a company called ZipDial, okay, which came up with this insight that a missed call is nothing but another click. So they've come up with a variety of use cases wherein you can provide a missed call to a pre-specified number. So if it's a marketeer who wants to send you back a coupon, if it's a marketeer who wants to run a certain survey, or if it's just any other service you want, you make a missed call and you can basically get a service. So the missed call effectively becomes like a click. The third one is a startup company called Avazde, where they've created basically a phone-based IVR, which anyone can set up their own IVR. So, and you also have essentially IVR-based voice Twitter, for want of a better term. So if you're a farmer and you have a particular query, then you can create a voice tweet and you can send it off within your circle. And there could be others who can basically answer your queries and come back. So these are all examples of people using the feature phone. So this looks good at this point of time, but as the smartphone penetration increases, okay, there can be substitutes. One important driver for all of this is the fact that most cell phone companies have completely ignored the Indian language. So if you see on all our cell phones, they primarily use English. If you take Indian languages, which have got very complex scripts, the rendering of those scripts on any of the cell phones in the market outside of iPhone is extremely poor. So if you want to read an Hindi text message, you'll end up getting only boxes, or there'll be very poor script. Hence, people tend to land up using voice as a substitute for text.
Okay, just quickly, just add one more point to the feature phone. I think in China, we don't really talk about feature phone anymore because everybody believes feature phone is dead. Everybody believes Nokia is, well, kind of dead. So yeah, but I think for China, I think it's probably I always think like internet or industries, internet or mobile is all about the culture. So as I said, like in China, people don't want to pay for the service, but we do want to pay money for the offline service. But there is I think the 2 point here. I think there are a group of people they want to pay for the mobile service. I think it's quite interesting. What we call that 3L group. L means L for love. So low age, low education, also low salary. Those are actually 3L group. Actually, they want to pay because they don't have that much of incomes, but they do have much of rubbish times. So because they have the phone, probably that's the only way to access the rest of the world. So they can spend like 10 RMBs, which is nothing. They can afford it. So every month to buy some e-books, some to download some games, like casual games. They can afford it, and then because the population, the user base is huge, so actually make lots of money too. So, I think the most interesting part I can give you an example is if you go to China, if you talk to people, Chinese the internet industry people, do tell the world what we call O2O. I don't know how many of you. I do think not many people here knows O2O model, but it's really popular word. If you tell your Chinese guys O2O model, people will consider you are expert. O2O actually is kind of short. Well, stands for online to offline. So that's a really popular model we are everybody talking about in Chinese industry. So I can give you an example, see how that works. So everybody here, you're familiar with the model of Uber, like get taxi. So you have the mobile phone, so you can search for like taxi around you, then you can book taxi, then the driver drive taxi here to pick you up. But in China, taxi, actually get a taxi doesn't really work in China because get a taxi in China is not that expensive. Except Beijing, get a taxi is quite hard, but in the rest of China, get a taxi is not that difficult. Also, the many people they have car. So in China now there's one app really popular. Many business people are doing that. Is the Chinese name is called Yi Dai Jia. So basically means maybe it's quite interesting. The LinkedIn, Chinese copy everything, Facebook, Twitter, but all looks quite successful. But the one exception is we try to copy LinkedIn many times from since the very beginning, but none of them success in China. The reason, maybe it's not an official answer, but I do think it's a cultural thing because Chinese people, when they do business, they don't really believe business can be done virtually. They want to see you face in face. They want to have dinner with you and get drunk with you. Then contract could be signed. But so that's something quite. Then the app I'm doing, the app, the example I gave you is that apps. So instead of finding the taxi around you, they help to find the independent driver around you. So I give you scenarios, because people want to meet, during dinner they have a drink, then get to know each other, and because these guys always CXO or they have their own car, But then there become a cultural issue is, always we see people drive car after they get drunk. So then that become social issues. Then what the app is doing is, instead of helping you to give your car, they give you independent drivers. And these drivers actually sign a contract with the company so to get a certificate. So when I get drunk, I just open the app. They'll say who's who's around the driver around me, so I can call the driver. The driver come to the restaurant, and drive my car and drive my car home. So then actually I gave them the cash, not pay the credit card. I just gave them the cash. So the 10 quite because they keep all the record. So actually the part of the company takes some commission fees, and the majority goes to the drivers. And those drivers actually they have a daily job, but they're kind of free. And so these drivers they sign contract with the company, and then so these drivers every day they just finding under a cafe or KFC and sitting there looking at the apps and looking for the business. But it's getting very popular, and there are many friends they say, okay, 7 days a week they are using apps like 5 times a week, which means like 5 days they are getting drunk. So yeah, but it's really interesting model. I would say, yeah. That's my take.
I don't think I'm drunk when I still open the app.
I don't know if model work here, but I'm sure it should work in rest of some place in Asia.